Yo, 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 good morning, Ram fans. Welcome to Monday Morning Cup of Coffee. I'm Steve Ivy with co-host Marty Lenz. Marty with his beautiful green coffee mug. How are you today, young man?
I am good. Had a nice weekend, and always a good week when the Rams win. So that was good, and it was nice. Otherwise, got to watch some football. Even watched some of the Golden Globes last night too. So it was a pretty good weekend. How about you?
Yeah, it was good. The weather was incredible yesterday. It's 55 degrees, no wind. I did stop over at CSU basketball practice yesterday afternoon, and I talked with the Landry Moffat, who's the director of basketball operations, as let me in. All the doors were locked to Moby, and I said, "Oh God, have you been outside?" She goes, "I've been inside all day, and I'm in my office. I got a lot of work to do to get ready for this road trip. Someday we should have Landry on our show. She's wonderful, but." It's a big trip because the Rams are going to be out. It's two road games this week, and they're going to be out all week. They leave today for Fresno, and then from Fresno they go to Boise. They won't be returning back to Fort Collins. The good news is they're chartering because you can't get from Fresno to Boise. So
Right, right. For obvious reasons, people don't want to get from Fresno to Boise or vice versa.
I don't know. I'd rather go in that direction than Boise to Fresno. I've been to both places, and I'd
Me too.
much rather be in Boise.
Right.
What did you make? What do you make of? Let's see. The Broncos get the Bills next, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, this is the old question, though, is be careful what you wish for. And while I appreciate saying, hey, man, you want to have a bit of a revenge tour, and you like to get the Bills on our turf, matchups. We talk about this all the time. Matchups make for fights. I would have rather seen, I think, the Chargers come back to town would have been my choice. But we'll see, because look, Josh Allen, and you and I both know, we saw him for 4 years torch the Rams, and he's done a pretty good job of torturing a lot of teams in the NFL. He's a wild card, and he's an elite player. And, the Bills have got the experience of being in the playoffs. They haven't gotten all the way yet, this iteration of the Bills. But I don't know. I mean, it's going to be I think, a dogfight and a great matchup. But the Bills aren't going to be afraid to come in here and play, and I think they're going to be super juiced about it. But I think the Broncos are going to be too. But we'll see. We'll see if this Broncos, what experience they bring to bear. This is the first time that they've been, if you want to say, the favorite in the top seed. So we'll see how they play, and if they play like that.
Yeah, I'm excited just to see it. Of course, the storyline will be the Broncos could have drafted
Of
Josh
course,
Allen.
yes.
And if
Always.
Bo Nix doesn't play a great game, they lost because 7 years ago or whatever it was, they didn't draft Josh Allen,
Yeah.
which is a dumb. You just have to move on. All teams, the team composition would be completely different. They'd
Course.
have a different coach. Everything is different if you draft somebody different 7 or 8 years ago, and it's a dumb storyline, but you're going to hear it. So
Right. Well, it's always that alternative universe. It's the what if, and if you have all those doors in front of you and you walk through that door. But here's the question too, and this is not a knock against Josh Allen. He hasn't gotten to the Super Bowl yet. He's gotten to the championship games, and granted, there's been that little team, the Kansas City Chiefs, standing in his way too, and elite quarterback as well. But just because of that doesn't always, the circumstances, a lot, as you say, depends. All the pieces and parts. If we had Josh Allen, we probably don't have Sean Payton, right? We're not looking at that.
Exactly.
That's a whole different dynamic. And you're right. You can never, assume or do that based on the current makeup or iteration, or, wish casting of what you wish you had or wish you would have done.
So, all right. Hey, our guest is in the background. We've got a great guest today, and let's bring him on. No need to wait. The
Hey,
Kevin
fellas.
Lytle from the Fort Collins, Coloradoan. Kev, how are you this morning, man?
Doing great. How are you guys doing today?
Doing good.
We are
Doing
we
good.
are awesome. Hey, before we get into basketball, I want to spend most of our time talking about basketball. You obviously cover all CSU athletics and do a great job covering the football team as well. And we've got another week of portal. How would you rate where CSU is at in terms of how they've done in the portal? And are you hearing anything about what might be coming this week?
So yeah, you summed up pretty well there. The portal closes on the 16th, but kind of just the reminder, that's only to enter the portal. You don't have to necessarily commit or sign to a new program during that period, but the timeline is pretty much the same because everyone needs to be signed as the semester begins. CSU will probably leave a few spots for, later, this summer, if they're, however it can happen, some few openings and whatever. But yeah, I think overall the quarterback position has been addressed with a couple different guys. I think Hosseini almost certainly is your expected number one, but they brought another guy from UConn. Obviously there's going to be a change in offense just on the style. These guys are athletic, I don't want to say just runners. It's not like they're only runners, but they will run. It looks like the RPO game is coming to CSU, which we haven't seen in forever. It's been a minute. So that's going to be an exciting change. I think they've run some good skill guys. I think we'll still see some more linemen. Got a Michigan State O lineman last night, but there'll be more to come. I think there's at least one or two more out there that haven't announced yet, but that are either signed or committed. So yeah, I would expect. I think right now I have my transfer tracker. I think at 22 or 23 additions for CSU. I expect it'll probably be about 30-ish, somewhere in the 30 range. So yeah, I mean, it's crazy. When we look at the roster for the 26 season, it's not going to look very familiar compared to 2025, but to be very blunt, that's probably what was needed.
Kevin, I want to go there for a minute, and I always pride myself in looking forward, but I do want to look back, because my question to you is this, having covered this team. When you see the guys that left CSU and you see where some of them land, Owen Long, some of the other guys, my instinct tells me the issue that CSU had this past season really wasn't lack of talent, might have been lack of chemistry and continuity and coaching. Do you see it the same way? Because it looked like there was talent there on that roster, but it just didn't cohese.
Yeah, I think it's some of all of that. The talent was much better than a 2-10 team. And some of it was all, people yell at me when I mention injuries, but there was a pretty horrific injury run that they suffered. And then you throw in all those things you said, cohesion or significant lack of it. I think there's certainly an argument that the coaches didn't have the right guys in the right positions, in the right method to succeed. So yeah, there was some talent on that team. It was not a 2-10 roster. But it obviously played like it. It was everything that can and will go wrong type of season. So yeah, there were some good players. I know, and Long obviously is the absolute highlight of that, but there were some good players that I think will find success elsewhere. But I do also think we saw, especially because of the injuries, we saw maybe there wasn't the depth there that you need to be a pretty successful program. I think that's part of why you're seeing such a huge overhaul of this new staff came in and obviously thought a lot of the guys here at CSU weren't ready to basically take it to the next level, and that's why you see a lot of players move on as well. So I think is all of it. There were some good players. It was a much better roster, and the record showed, but it needed a pretty good overhaul in a lot of different ways.
Speaking of let's switch gears to basketball. We're talking about how injuries can have an impact on a team. We saw it with CSU, and we started seeing signs of maybe a little bit of a change. The team started out well. They played mostly without Rashawn Mbemba. Then Kyle Jorgensen got hurt against Utah State, and we saw some struggles. This week we saw Rashawn Mbemba come back, and I know you highlighted that in your summary of the CSU, the 70-62 win over UNLV, categorized as a great rock fight win, but you really highlighted Rashawn's return, Kev. What do you think it meant to CSU going forward?
Yeah, I think it's big. I think first is just the physicality he brings. He's the guy that initiates contact pretty much in every possession, offensively, defensively, and not everyone does that. It's a nice kind of mentality to have that can really help the team on both sides of the ball. I think there's a lot of pseudo intangible things that he brings, as far as he knows the offense really well. He helps run things. He knows all the sets, both offensively and defensively. He can help make sure everyone's in the right place, because you have to remember this is still a pretty new team across the board, and especially with Jorgensen out, most of the guys playing haven't been in the system for a full season. So his knowledge can help there. Passion, he plays with fire, all those things, and obviously skill. He's a good player. I know, people get frustrated sometimes with Bimba, but I think he's a guy that does a lot of little things right. He had I think his 4 offensive rebounds against UNLV. Again, just that physicality that not everyone has. He brings that. And in some ways, kind of a steadying presence. Like, it's kind of silly. You don't think he's not point guard or anything like that. But there are times on offense where that piece spot is so important that sometimes you need to just throw it to them, let them get the fulcrum running a little bit, and Rashawn can do that.
He's a settling force is what I get with him, Kevin. I just feel like when he's on the court, to your point, everything you said, 100% on, but there's a calmness and a confidentness that you have. And you're right. He's not the point guard, but it's almost like you get it to him to kind of set things up. And then I felt the flow went. I wanted to jump off on that and ask at this point obviously I think injuries are hurting the Rams a little bit, but to your point, are they really still trying to figure out the continuity of the system that Coach Ali wants to run? And frankly, too, other teams watch game film. Do you think some of the teams of late have really game planned against the Rams, saying, great, you're number 1 in the country in shooting threes. We're going to take you out of that and make us beat you inside and not really have some of the big guys inside?
Yeah, you're seeing what happens in conference play of everyone knows everything very, very well. They know all the sets, all the everything. And like you say, a scout is so much deeper because the games are so much more important. It's not like an MTE where it's like, well, we found out 12 hours ago we're playing this team, so let's do a rough draft. They know everything. And now you have enough games too that teams know both strengths and weaknesses. So strengths, like you say, 3-point line, teams are making sure you don't leave Josh Pasquarelli. Part of the reason his numbers have dipped are because he's getting a lot of pressure, especially, you get back to injuries. Well, Kyle Jorgensen would help relieve some of that because he was a big threat. So now teams are like, well, Jorgensen's out. Let's make sure Pasquarelli doesn't hit 8 threes on us. So there's a lot of that. And then teams have realized CSU can be vulnerable when you pressure them really hard with the ball. And so that's what everyone's going to do. That's what Ali and all the players have said of basically until we prove it, everyone is going to high pressure us because we've turned it over a lot. And that's, just a fact. And they're a little better against UNLV than New Mexico, but still not great. They turned over too much. And it's not just the number of turnovers. You can't have Nico Medved always called them pick sixes where it leads to a dunk on the other end. They've had too many of those, but teams are going to keep doing that. I think they will improve that. But teams just know, they know everything about each other right now. And I think that's why you're seeing CSU kind of hit a little bit of a wall. And I think part of it too is just the Mountain West. I think Utah State is great. And then I think the whole kind of middle group are all going to beat each other up.
It's funny, Marty and I, before we came on, we talked exactly about that, the middle beating up on each other. Utah State has separated some. And the example I used was how CSU went into Grand Canyon and beat them. Grand Canyon went to Boise and beat them. New Mexico got beat by Boise by basically double digits, and then New Mexico came down here and beat CSU by double digits. And it's like you go, how do you make sense of it? Well, you've got 4 good teams that happen to play well on that particular day. I want to talk. We talked about Rashawn. I got a comment here. I don't know if do you have any news on Kyle Jorgensen's timeline?
Not exact, but it's not imminent. Like, he's not playing this week. I think it'll still be a while.
Okay. Yeah. I wanted to talk about that. Obviously CSU has Rashawn back, and we all saw the difference he made. I think, just watching it from where I sit, the offense runs that much faster. Rashawn is much more comfortable running the offense than Augie might be. Augie's got 3 or 4 games. Rashawn has 60 games doing it. So not a criticism of Augie, just Rashawn's more comfortable. And we have him going. What's it going to take for CSU to kind of survive bringing Jorgensen so that they can get Jorgensen back? What do you think the 1 or 2 things we've got to see in the near future before Kyle comes back?
They've talked a lot about depth, and when they've won in league play, that's what it's been, kind of different guys. Augie had the big game at Grand Canyon. Bimba coming back was a big part of the win over UNLV. You have different guys that can take over a game. Kerry Booth has had some big performances. So you have different guys. So it's not like you need, it doesn't have to be just Brandon Recksteiner going off and everyone else kind of being dragged along, or Pasquarelli going off or whatever. So you just need guys to, it's pretty cliche here, but different guys on different nights. And that's where the strength of this team should be, is that you can do that. I think we're going to see Pasquarelli get unstuck at some point. He's too good a shooter to continue the struggles he's had. So he's going to get going. If you can protect the ball, they still have enough weapons that they can score enough. I think we're starting to see the edge turn defensively. I'm not saying CSU is elite defensively or anything like that. I think they're improving. I think they're trending upward. Bimba returning will help them continue to trend upward defensively. So if you can be middle of the pack in the league on defense, I think this team is good enough offensively that will win you some games.
I know we're probably not quite at the midway point, Kevin, of course, because I think of the tournament as well, the Mountain West tournament. But if you had to give CSU at this point what you're seeing a letter grade, what would you give? And player-wise, who do you think so far has been a big surprise? I don't even want to say young people being a disappointment, but somebody you think right now, okay, we need to see a little more from them.
Yeah, it's funny you asked that, because I was thinking I was maybe going to put this on social media sometime here this week of going into the season. What was your expectation for CSU now with what you've seen and what we know as far as injuries and everything? What is your new expectation, so to speak? So I've kind of been thinking about that. Overall, if I had to put a letter grade, I'd say B. They're not an NCAA tournament team, which, you can't be an A if you're not an NCAA tournament team in my mind. As of right now, obviously last year's team wasn't an NCAA tournament this time a year ago either. But I think you factor everything in. It's Ali Farouk-Manesh's first year as head coach. You have 8 new players, and then you had 2 of your most important players. All summer we heard a whole lot about how big Bimba and Jorgensen were going to be. Obviously, Jorgensen was incredible before he was hurt. So you have those 2 miss significant time, and you're 11-5 and have some good wins, have a couple not great losses. All in all, I think that's not bad. It's not perfect. It's not sensational, but it's funny. You look at CSU basketball, a decade or more ago, and it's like, oh, being a top 100 team would be amazing. And now that's the expectation. CSU's sitting, kind of mid 80s, low 90s in all the metrics, and everyone's like, wish is better, which is fair. That's the standard, but it shows how much the standard has risen. So all in all, I think when you consider everything, I don't think you can be too mad about where CSU is at.
Looking ahead, we've got a couple of big games this week. Let me see if you agree with this. I think these are 2 really pivotal games. Fresno is obviously, CSU's finally getting a little bit of a break in terms of schedule. They've played nothing but above 500 teams. They and Boise, the reason they're struggling, I think, is because they've been playing the toughest teams. And now they get a little bit of a break going on the road at Fresno. And then they get a Boise team that is at 1-4. They've lost 3 in a row. They've been struggling and expected to finish in the top 3 in the preseason. I see this as a pivotal week with a chance to maybe steal a couple of road wins. How do you see this week coming up, and what do you think we can expect to see, Kev?
Yeah, the formula for success in league play is always dominate at home and steal a few road wins when you can. Now, CSU obviously already has 2 losses at home, so they need to equal, kind of balance that ledger a little bit. And a way to do that could be get some wins this week. I think Fresno is always a weird game. They're always, physical. They're never great, but they're always physical. CSU doesn't tend to play well out there. They kind of get ugly wins in the last few years. It's a weird place. It's a giant arena with no one in it. But, Zayon Collins, who's one of their most important players, missed last game. So we'll see if he's available. But if he's out, that would be important. And then Boise, super weird. Like you say, they can be dangerous, but they've also had a pretty rough last week or so with a couple bad home losses. They had the herd kind of take over their student section last weekend, and some of the drama and controversy, or whatever you want to call it, around that. So I think they're vulnerable right now. I think this is a week CSU needs at least a 1-1, but 2-0 is possible. And if you can get out of this week 2-0, you're feeling pretty good if you're CSU.
On that note, Kevin, when you look at the Mountain West as a total, do you see this? Is this a 3-bid league this year? Maybe 4? Does it depend?
4 might be tough. Again, just with everyone beating each other up, and non-conference wasn't amazing across the league. If I had to bet right now, I'd say 3 get in. And I think Utah State's pretty much a lock already.
Yeah.
They would need quite a meltdown.
Yeah, they're sitting at, I think, 13 in the net.
That's
pretty strong.
I knew they'd be good, but they're better than I expected. It's really impressive.
Joey with a comment. Kevin's beard is top tier Mountain West. Marty jealous of the beard. What about Joey? What about me? Is it too white? Am I too old? Hey, what I want to talk. I have one of the things I want to talk. So obviously, the short term, we're looking forward to these 2 games, Kev. But as the season goes on, and as we hope Kyle comes back sooner rather than later, one of the things I wanted to point out, they've only played basically 1 game together.
Yep. And
they played a little bit. Rashawn played a little bit against DU, but we finally saw, but he played. They didn't play together in that game. Rashawn came on for Kyle just for a few minutes in the first half. The only time they played together was against Virginia Tech before Rashawn got hurt again. And there seemed to be some upside. They played a really good second half, and the 2 of those guys actually played a total of 27 minutes, which means they were on the floor together for 7 minutes. What do you see looking forward with those 2 guys on the floor? Do you think they can coexist at the 4 and 5?
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see continued lineup changes. I mean, I think we're going to see a few evolutions. I won't be surprised if we see Rashawn Bimba starting this week at that center position because, like you said, Augie has been doing it, but that's out of position for him. He'd been trying to learn the 4, and now it's like, oh, surprise, you have to learn a totally new position. So I won't be surprised to see Bimba starting soon. I don't know exactly when, but I won't be surprised if it's this week. And then whenever Kyle comes back, what do you do? The guy was averaging, like 18 points a game when he got hurt. Are you going to put him on the bench? He had worked at the 4 at times this offseason with Bimba at the 5. So you might see some of that. I think we're going to see, again, it's a little bit TBD based on, when it is that Kyle comes back. But I think we're going to see some different tinkering and shuffling and changing. And some will depend on both how Bimba's playing and, what he's doing when Kyle comes back. And also if they're going to, need to ease Kyle in and all that. But I think you're going to see some interesting mixing and matching that I'm not sure they probably even know for sure right now what it'll look like. It could be matchup dependent. And Ollie talked about that a lot this summer of he thought the lineup could, kind of be morphine depending on who matchups are. So I think that could come back into play.
And Kevin, on that note, and I say this all the time, and I've other guests we've had on this lovely pod, I've mentioned this too, but you never want your best guys to be hurt. But is the possible silver lining, the gift is you're getting some guys, some depth, some experience, some playing in roles they're not used to. And now all of a sudden you see an Augie, you see a Joppa and saying, wow, what if we put this combo in? And when we get Kyle and Memba back, holy crud, how are we going to find the ability to play some of these guys that now we've got a real great depth on this team as well? Could that be at least the one good thing with all the injuries that they've suffered early?
Yeah, definitely. You asked me earlier, I forgot to answer about, kind of players who had impressed and, maybe need to see more of. Augie is one of those guys that, if you'd asked me that 10 days ago, I would have said, we need more from Augie, because he's a kind of veteran guy that they brought in and, had struggled some with the new system and everything, but he's had some good games in the last couple of weeks. And you hope that something like that, even though he's had to change positions, now maybe he understands all of it more, gains some more confidence. And so that, when those guys are back and in, their normal spots, you now have more depth because Augie, a guy like Augie has more confidence and understanding of the system and all that. So I think it can help in that way. And even, a guy like John McConan probably wasn't going to be seeing the floor much all. Now he's getting some minutes. Darnell Slayer's getting a few more minutes. Now, do those disappear when everyone's healthy? Possibly, but you never know. Like we've seen weird games in March, a guy gets hurt or you have crazy foul trouble, and all of a sudden you're, calling down to, the 11th spot on the bench, and CSU has guys that, theoretically should be able to come in and can contribute all the way down. So in that way, it can help. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We've kept you for your 20 minutes, Kev. Before you go though, what you got cooking in terms of stuff you're working on for the Coloradoan this week?
Yeah, a little bit of everything. So I have updates on all the transfers that we were talking in football and all that jazz. Basketball updates. I've got. I don't want to tease it too much. I got a few different things I think will be fun for basketball fans, both looking back at some previous teams and also perhaps looking forward at some Rams who you might see in the future who are having some pretty big seasons in high school right now. So dipping around a lot of different things at the moment, but should be hopefully some fun stuff for CSU fans.
Kevin, I have one question because a lot of times I get asked of this, and even though kind of where I was before, it's a little similar to you, where you're covering a franchise or an org that you're not beholden to them at the Colorado. It's not the same way. It's not like you're writing for the university per se. But people always ask, how critical are you able to be? How honest are you able to be in the coverage when you're the beat writer for said program? And so I want to ask you that. Do you ever feel like you necessarily can't be, and I love your writing, but ever can't be honest or fully whatever you want to feel because you feel like, look, I'm somewhat of a little bit of a stakeholder with the program. So when you write for a program, where's that balance of like, look, I'm not looking to tear them down, but we have to have an honest dialogue, because I see people that just like to tear them down and aren't honest about it. And then I don't see a lot of, cheerleading. That's more me. I do most of cheerleading because I'm Mr. Sunshine all the time. But where's that balance for you as a writer and somebody who's a beat writer and covers the university and covers the programs?
No, I love that. It's a great question because, yeah, it is an interesting world. I think for me, my biggest thing is fairness and honesty. And I say this to people at CSU all the time of, I'm going to put in the work as far as I'm going to be there. I'm at, practices, games, pretty much every availability there is. I'm always there. I feel that's required for me to then be honest. If I'm a no-show, come up for one random game and take shots, I feel like there's, some ethical challenges there. But I feel it's big for me to have as much possible knowledge about the programs as I can. And with that, then when I'm honest, even if it's, quote unquote negative, it's fair because it's based on information and facts and knowledge of the program and the system and everything like that. So I think it's very important for me to be honest in criticism and in praise. I think, a thing I always say, I think people always overreact to wins and overreact to losses. And I usually the reality should somewhere be in the middle, and I aim for that. But yeah, when, bad things or whatever happening with the job of that. So when good is happening, it's not cheerleading to say, look at this good thing that's happening. It's a reality of a situation. So yeah, I try and toe that line. It's always interesting. And, to CSU administration and credit, I think for the most part, as long as they feel I'm, fair and accurate, obviously I don't always love if it's, bad news, so to speak, but as long as it's fair, I think they're usually fine. And I'm also pretty open of, hey, if you guys, whoever it is, a coach, a player, a administrator, if you're pissed about something I wrote, I'm around. Call me, find me at the arena. Let's talk. I'll explain why I wrote what I wrote. You can explain why you're mad. We can discuss it. We may leave agreeing to disagree, but at least we have a dialogue rather than just like this rage simmering behind the scenes. So it's a interesting, tricky job, when you write that column or whatever about this or that going wrong, and you're showing up the next day and seeing the person you wrote about or the program you wrote about. It's kind of weird, but it's part of the job. I think, hopefully I balance that pretty well, but I think that's what fans, deserve and need.
Hey, real quick before I let you go, I don't know if you saw BJ Rains up in Boise got absolutely hammered for a headline he wrote by Leon Rice by Leon absolutely murdered him. Have you ever been hammered by a CSU coach or anybody internal to the athletic department?
Steve Adazio name ring a bell to anyone?
Well, that's a good one. That's a good one. I'll say that.
I could tell stories about interactions and press conferences and whatnot with Steve for a very long time. But yes, have had some of those. I mean, I won't get into the specifics of who or what, but there's
what's your agenda, for God's sake?
Had a coach recently upset about something, and kind of like I said a minute ago, we sat down, had a chat. I don't think they necessarily are sending me Christmas cards or anything, but we were able to both explain our points and shook hands and walked away, and we've interacted since and been fine. It's it's just how it goes sometimes.
So before you go, we need to reiterate one thing. As Joey mentioned, the coffee cup, you will be receiving an official Monday morning cup of coffee mug. As Joey said, it is the most sought after piece of Rams souvenir in 2026. I have CSU assistant coaches begging to come on so that they can get a coffee cup out of it. Anyway,
Steve, the DMs I begin. Hey, do you know how to get the mug?
Kevin, thank you so much for coming on. Are you headed? Are you going to Fresno?
Not making this trip. The Fresno one is always so hard because it's expensive to get there, and to be blunt, readership is usually lesser because Fresno State is not very good in basketball usually. So this is one that I usually do not make, and unfortunately, that's the case this year as well.
Okay. Kevin, you do great. You do great work, Kevin. I love reading when I your stuff when you can. You do a really, really nice job. You teach me things. I mean, I think I'm in the know about the university, but I learn things from you. So thank you. Really
appreciate that. Really appreciate you guys always.
You bet. Well, have a great week, and I'll figure out a way to get your coffee mug probably at the game next week. I'll run it by
We'll probably be able to run it by
the press box. All right.
Sounds great. Thank you guys so much. Have a good rest of your day.
Kevin.
See you, Kev. Kevin Lytle. I love his work. We are blessed. I talk about this all the time, Marty. We are blessed to have so many good young people covering Rams athletics. Kevin with the Coloradoan, Justin Michael, who we've had on for DNVR Rams, does an unbelievable job. And I had a young man named Tyler King on my show on Thursday night, who works for the Denver Gazette, writes for the Gazette, covers basketball, and has his own podcast that covers basketball in the mountains. And three young guys just doing, I think, really, really good, solid work.
I do too. And Kevin brings up a good point because, like I said, I'm definitely a sunshine pumper. But I also say this too. I always feel like to be critical of the university, you do have to be part of the family. You got to be present. And Kevin brings up the point. Look, he's at all the games. He's covering it. A lot of times I've seen this, and you've seen this for decades too, where there's pot shots taken at the Rams. And it's kind of like, I get the point, but how many games have you seen this year? Are you covering them on a regular basis, or is it just low-hanging fruit? And I've always said this. I've always felt that Colorado State in many ways has been an easy punching bag for a lot of media for a variety of reasons. Some of it is self-induced by the university, but not of late, not the last 20 years. And so sometimes I think a lot of things that are written about the university are through that prism, through that kaleidoscope of how they see the university. They see it in the, in the 1980s, 1990s. They don't see it as the university of the 21st century. And that sometimes bothers me. So I never have a problem with Kevin or anybody being critical, because you know what? I know he's there, and I know he's writing about it, and he's watching it every day. He's not doing it from a 50,000 foot perch and then saying, oh, what do I don't write today? I'm going to write an article about this. And it's half informed, and it's kind of pot shots. And I see that. And that's something that's always kind of bothered me, that I feel that we have gotten, the university's probably gotten better about getting their message out and the perception of things. So that's first and foremost. But the coverage of us, I feel, is much more accurate. I don't want to say more fair, but I'm just saying is more accurate and gives the full context of what's going on, the good, the bad, the ugly of the university. So, and Kevin's one of those people. He does a really nice job. And you're right, Justin and the other people covering it do a great job.
Justin's out there right now. Actually, here we go. First thing he said, using my coffee cup this morning. I'm glad. Yeah, it is a big thing, but Justin is being humble here. Kev's the GOAT. Tyler King, the most versatile beat man in the game. Appreciate the kind. Justin, you're phenomenal. You really are. And the fact that he's expanded and does, I have no idea how he is able to flip between CSU athletics and then going to the Avalanche and doing an unbelievable job with the Avalanche. He's an extraordinary young person, and I still owe him a meal. I have to have him over for dinner one of these days.
Covering the Avalanche is easy right now. They're just like otherworldly. So right, and we win again. They are just, I mean, they are just, my God, I have not seen this dominant of a Denver sports franchise in forever. I mean, I really haven't. This Avalanche team is just something else. Just something else.
They are fun. It is fun to watch. I wanted to talk about one thing that actually had a little bit of a laugh with yesterday. I did go to practice and I ran into John Weber, and they ran a promotion at CSU over the holidays with the students out of basically if you showed a student ID, you got in for free, and it led to crowds being better. The crowd for Nevada was actually really, really good. It was almost 6,000 people, and then the ones for New Mexico and UNLV weren't quite as big, but there were a good number of people who took advantage of the promotion, and it was really interesting because Boise State copied that promotion for the game against Utah State Saturday, where they offered free admission to anybody with a student ID. The Utah State students got wind of it. I don't know if you saw this, but Utah State students got wind of it, and they organized road trips, a large number of people doing road trip to Boise, and it got so big, and it was they were going to be such a formidable group. And kudos to the herd, the Utah State student section, that they had Boise at the last minute change the policy to the student IDs had to be from the state of Idaho. Which to me is the cheesiest thing ever. Right. But to the credit of the Utah State athletics, the basketball staff, they organized a fund to pay for tickets for those students, and they were a force up in Boise. And there's video of it, there's pictures of it. Kudos to them, but kudos to John Weber for coming up with a promo that was copied by Boise. Right. I just died laughing when they had to change the wording of the promo.
Those Utah State fans, they're a hardy group. I cannot wait till we get Utah State on our home court. I'm going to be there. I cannot wait for that game. Cannot wait. Little revenge there coming, I hope.
Yeah, well, they're murdering everybody. Here we go. Aaron with a comment. Reminds me of when CSU offered all members of the military with ID free admission to Hughes. Of course, we played Air Force that day. Yeah, maybe not the best thought out promo. Anyway, we gotta figure out a way to wrap up. It's an exciting, like I said, an exciting week. These are. You can't put games as must wins because so many things have to happen. You can only play the game in front of you. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with this Fresno State game. They are an up and down team. Maybe not quite as they are athletic, not quite as good as UNLV. We saw a very athletic team with UNLV that was a little disorganized. I think Fresno may be a little more organized, maybe not quite as athletic, but they'll offer similar challenges. They've played some teams reasonably tough. I'm excited about the game. It's tomorrow night. The team flies out today, and it's tomorrow night. But looking ahead, this is a big week, right?
It is. Well, I was going to say, I mean, I'm excited. You play the game in front of you, but I got to tell you the Boise State game, only because, as you've acknowledged, we know they're a very wounded bird. And what concerns me about teams that are wounded like that, Boise's really backed into the corner. And so, you full know, and again, you can't worry about that if you're CSU, you got Fresno State first, but you full know, I expect the iteration we're going to get out of Boise State on Thursday is going to be something. It's going to be pretty intense because they know it's home court and they realize, look, there's no way we can, have 4 or 5 conference losses and be legitimately seeded and have a real opportunity. So I think they're and look, however we feel about Coach Leon Rice, I know you and I have talked, off the podcast about how we kind of feel about him. He's still a pretty darn good coach, but he's surly. But I just, like I said, I could see them being really ready and really prepared for us. So, like I said, I want to go into Fresno, take care of business, but we better be ready to bring to conflate, sports, sayings all the time, as they say in hockey. We better be ready to bring our A game to Boise later in the week. So,
yeah, it's a classic for Boise this week. You talk about chemistry versus over biology.
yeah,
I always talk about fight or flight. This is
right.
something that's inside our genetics, and it's fight or flight time for Boise. I want to mention something else about Leon. I actually like Leon. Every time, I've talked to him after a bunch of games over the last, ever since they entered the Mountain West Conference. And he's always been very gracious and nice to talk to. He's really a nice man. And while some people don't like his sideline antics, I will tell you he's a really good guy. He did something at a post-game press conference this week after the Grand Canyon game where he called out his point guards for his only having 2 assists during the game. They got smoked by Grand Canyon at home, and it was a very disappointing game for the Broncos. A very surprising result because they had been playing decent up until then. But he called out his point guards, and one of the things that I don't know if you saw this, but the Utah State kids, the students that were at the game, when that point guard, their starting point guard for Boise, went to the free throw line, the chant roared from the rafters, "Leon hates you."
Oh, God.
Leon hates you.
Oh, my God.
You got to watch out what you say because some people
Geez.
will pick up on it. And I just laughed when I saw it, but they have issues there, and it's just one of those things where you really have to watch what you say in public. I'm sorry, I think he made a horrible tactical mistake there, and that may have led to some bad feelings, and maybe they've got some serious patching up to do. But they're a good program, like you said. They win a lot. They've been to the tournament 3 of the last 5 years, and in terms of fight or flight, I think it's going to be fight on Friday night up there, like a lot of fight.
You know what I think? I think you can be critical of your team as a whole. I think in college, I'm not necessarily a fan of coaches calling out specific players in college. So I was going to say because they're not getting paid, though that's not true anymore. They are getting paid, but it's not like the pros where if you're a coach of a franchise, you can call out your star player. I think that is appropriate. The college thing, I less. So you could maybe say, look, we need more from our guard play. I'd like to see our guard play be more helpful, assist. That I think is all. But if you specifically call out guys by name in to be critical, I don't, unless they do something egregious like spit on a player or punch a player. I don't necessarily think that really goes over very well and works very well. Just my thought.
Well, it's interesting because a few years ago, I don't know if I've ever shared this story. I've shared it with people, but behind the scenes. But a few years ago, the year CSU was struggling, the 2022-2023 season, when the year Isaiah got hurt but came back, but the team continued to struggle. And they were, from my mind, underachieving. And there was a game they played. It was the State Pride game. We just played the State Pride game against UNLV, and I'm very happy they won. Carrie Booth had a great game playing for State Pride, but it was the State Pride game 3 years ago, or the 2023 season. I can't remember who they played, but they got beat and they didn't play. They played poorly, and I was writing back then, and I wrote something. I know exactly what I wrote. I wrote "State Pride my ass."
I think I remember that headline that you had.
And it was very, very disappointing. And I learned a lot after that. I got a phone call from a head coach of the basketball team. Nico called me up.
Wow.
And he didn't chew me out, but he said, "Steve, you need to realize something. This stuff goes out on social media, And there are guys that some people can handle it, some people can ignore it, and these people are young and they're not necessarily mature. They aren't grown up. There's a lot, they feel the pressure and they aren't necessarily mature enough to deal with it. And it really, really, it breaks them. It really does. And so I try and watch out. You won't hear me say, you won't see me very often. I might be critical of somebody's play, but it is very
Mhm.
focused on the game and it is not focused on the spirit and the attitude
Right.
because they really are all trying. And I learned something that day from Coach Medved, and I try not to be as glitzy in my headlines or in the talk. It really tries to be more matter of fact, but it is something that you do need to be concerned with. So.
A colleague of mine who is a legendary sports talker, kind of a similar vein, and I won't go too on long here, but he says it's one thing to question one guy's play, but he says I'm very careful about questioning somebody's heart. You never know. It doesn't mean they don't have heart. It just maybe didn't work out that way, or they're just having a tough time. But don't question their heart and their desire. He says you got to, and he didn't say don't do this, but you got to be very careful about that because you could see kids giving all the effort in the world, but it's a struggle. It's just not there. It's not happening, whatever else. He says, so you got to be mindful of that. And I remember that in my sports talk days, and that always resonated with me as well. Talking about the college kids, because I think you got a little more kid gloves, if you will, college gloves, if you will, than you do with the professionals, because the professionals, based on just the money they make and the prestige and star power and the clout they carry in these sports leagues, especially the NBA, they've got to be able to shoulder that blame. Or shoulder that criticism, if you will.
Yeah, I've got a comment here. The pressure is different now with the players getting compensated,
Yeah.
and it's unfortunate. I try not to focus on that, but some people do, and some people say, well, they're just like pros. They deserve to hear it like the
Yeah.
pros, and I don't believe that. The expectations may be high for me about a team playing, but it has nothing to
Yeah.
do with how they're being compensated. It has to do with whether they're playing for the front of the jersey.
Right.
And I will point out if I think they need to. You've heard me point out after some games this year that we didn't have
Mhm.
enough fight.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and you saw it against UNLV. The fight was there as the game went on. They
Mhm.
realized they were in a scrap, and you could see, I, you know, I you could sense a little bit of the nerves of the team having lost two games at home
Yeah.
and in a row, and feeling like a must needed win. And you should feel like every game is a must
Must
win,
win.
but you can't let it affect your play either. It needs to be built into your DNA, and it needs to be built into your fight for loose balls, your fight for fighting over a screen on defense or whatever. And we
Right.
we saw that in the last few minutes against UNLV, and that I think that was that CSU turned a little bit of a corner. But that's the what I look for. And when you hear me say there isn't enough fight, you won't hear me say so and so doesn't have any heart, so and so is
Right.
crap, so and so is this, so and so is that. And I think it's important that we recognize that. And I think Leon made a big mistake, to be honest with you, calling out his point guards. He said something that was just really completely out of bounds to me when he was talking about one of those guards and how poorly he was shooting, and he said, "Heck, he'd be better off shooting from half court than taking the shots
Yeah.
he's taking."
Yeah, that doesn't exactly instill confidence. I want to a quick pivot on that. I want to say something that I do like about Coach Farouk Namesh that I think he learned from Coach Medved, which I like. Because one thing I'll say about the CSU team, one thing I like about Coach Ali, he's not rigid in his coaching style. And that some coaches are so rigid, my way, my way, my way. What I like about Coach Farouk Namesh, when I've seen in the team when they've struggled, he's willing to shake things up. He'll make changes. He puts the lineup. What I like is, hey, man, this isn't working this way. Let's try something different. To me, that's a high IQ coach to say, maybe I don't have the answers with the situation, so I'm going to try to change it up, get a different combination of guys in different positions. I've seen that this year, and there's something about that. One, I think that's humility, but to me, that's high IQ by the coaching staff to say, hey, we need to shake it up a little bit, or we need to just change this or tweak this. It's not about, if you do it this way, it's going to work. He's like, no, this isn't working. I'm going to make the adjustments with the guys and give them an opportunity to succeed versus always having the guys fit his plan. That's one thing I like about what I see with Coach Farouk Namesh this season so far.
Yeah, he's growing into it too. We sometimes forget that he's a first year coach,
Yeah.
and he's finding his way. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I wouldn't trade him for anybody else in the
No.
country right now. I really wouldn't. I think we have a superstar on our hands, and I think he's done a really really great job with this squad this year. Um, and they're fighting off, like we've talked about the injuries. We talked about maybe it being a little bit of a blessing to develop guys like Kia Doulis and other players, and there's really a lot to look forward to with this team. There still might be some bumps in the road, given that Kyle Jorgensen isn't back yet, but I think we're headed up and to
Well,
the right with this team.
I think it's safe to say, Stephen, you know better than anybody because you cover this team intimately. I think the ceiling is very high for this team. We haven't even hit the ceiling of what this ceiling, I think, is very, very high. And then the other point, what I love when we talk to coaches, when I ask fill in the blank, if CSU does, blank, they're going to win. Rebound. Look at the games that CSU has won. We've hit the boards. We've out rebounded teams. And I laughed to myself saying, oh, good. Are we out rebounding Vegas? For a spate there in that game, we weren't. And I said, that's killing us. Then we started hitting the boards, and that
Yep.
made a difference. So
That
I was like,
turned the
yeah,
game.
rebound.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
No.
anyway, and I think I don't have this 100% guaranteed, verified, but I think we're going to probably have one of the assistant coaches on
Great.
next Monday. They were
Good.
busy today. We got Kev
course.
on. We'd like to get coaches on. Kev, I've been trying to get on for a month.
Oh, I love it.
And
Love
I'm
it.
glad
Love
he
it.
was able to join us. But well, I think we're going to have Cole Gentry, young assistant coach, on next Monday. He wants a mug.
The
So
mug.
anyway,
Yes.
you bet. Yeah, there we go. So
There it is.
thanks. We got to go. We've stayed on. Wait, this is too much fun. I have such a good time with you, Marty. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We've had a good crew. Let's look forward to this week with games in Fresno on Tuesday and Boise on Friday. I'll be doing post-game shows on Tuesday and Friday, my Swallowpalooza Thursday, and then Marty and I will be back again next Monday. So thanks, everybody. Marty, have a great week.
Thank you. Thank you. Go Rams.
Go Rams.